Okay, well, you mentioned Iraq. It's been a terrible few days in Iraq. Very little reporting in this country. For a start, why do you think that we don't, here in Britain and in the United States, in fact, NATO nation media does not cover a country which, of course, was invaded by NATO nations?
I don't think basically. I think it's a bit of a guilt that we invaded that country because we thought that we are going to make it into a beacon of democracy, prosperity, as an economic success in that ocean of chaos and poverty and misery. In reality, it became actually the center of poverty and misery in the Middle East right now. You know, I was discussing this with a few friends a few days ago, and I said that Saddam Hussein...
MI6 friends?
Maybe ex-ones. But after the Gulf War, Saddam Hussein was able to, in 1991, he was able to restore electricity to Baghdad, full electricity, within 4 days, and the rest of the entire country within 2 months. It's been now 16 years since the end of the war and the invasion in Iraq, and they haven't restored any of the pre-war electricity, water sanitization, and water delivery to homes since then. 16 years and $400 billion of oil revenue money throughout these 16 years lost to corruption.
Which is why some say that, of course, it was a deliberate attempt to destabilize Iraq in the region, as NATO nations have been blamed for before. Perhaps the biggest geopolitical event was the Houthi strike on Aramco. Now there's been a torpedo attack on an Iranian oil vessel. Iran says this is heating oil for Syria in the winter. What do you think the Houthis are going to do next? They're going to hit the desalinization plants of Saudi Arabia?
I mean, they tried before. They tried this twice before. And from the beginning, the war started in Yemen because the Saudis found themselves in a vulnerable position. In the past, they always thought that if they, in order to keep their water desalinization plants out of the east, where they are vulnerable to Iranian strikes, they put them in the west. They put refineries who were in the east also in the west, so they can export oil from there.
How bad are their defense systems sold to them by the United States that they can't stop these attacks? Obviously, we're going back to the S-400s in Turkey. How bad are their U.S. defense systems?
I mean, even the Russians are having difficulty with drones in Syria, defending their own bases in Syria. Drone technology is a very different beast from any missile. So the Israelis basically are the only ones who developed the Iron Dome, which actually can defend against drones. But even their system was penetrated by a Hezbollah drone, which actually flew for more than 24 kilometers into Israel before it was intercepted. Drones are more difficult because they fly well below the radar detection range, and at the same time, basically, it's just they're small.
You were in Al-Qaeda when the U.S. warship was destroyed just by a rubber dinghy. How vulnerable is Saudi Arabia right now? We saw oil prices spike in a record oil price movement.
Of course, the Saudis are vulnerable because when you are using a hybrid of, a hybrid cruise missile slash drones flying below 30 meters above the ground, undetected, and then striking targets with accuracy because the possibility of an insider help, where some people basically, placed tracking devices in order to guide these missiles straight into their targets. Of course, basically, this is a big vulnerability, insider threat with an outsider threat coming together in this form. It was a really big shock to the Saudis to understand that this attack was coordinated from outside and inside. That's the first thing. The second thing also, their vulnerability wasn't only just the Hormuz Strait, Bab al-Mandab, which now, the Houthis basically have their own forces just nearby. So Saudi food security, Saudi energy export security, Saudi water desalination security, all of these three major fundamental securities are under threat. And of course, basically their war against the Houthis in Yemen was to remove a fundamental part of that threat. No nation can tolerate, basically someone putting a gun to their head, their water security head, their food security head, and their energy export security head. No one allow, this to happen.
Indeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.